The quarry did not look like a battlefield. Under the pale Colorado sun, dry mesa stretched quiet and brittle, a landscape of pale stone and wind-cut ridges. Sagebrush clung stubbornly to the soil. The air carried dust and the faint mineral tang of exposed rock. It was hard to imagine that beneath this calm surface lay a story of hunger. Yet the ground told a different truth. 15 million centuries earlier, this place had trembled with life. At the University College London, far from the desert heat, Cassius Morrison leaned over a table crowded with bone maps and network diagrams. He traced lines between names, Allosaurus to juvenile sauropod. Another line. And another. He frowned. "That's too many," he murmured. Across the reconstructed food web, the same small bodies kept reappearing. Juvenile long necks. Again and again. The river plain, 150 million years ago. The air shimmered above a wide Jurassic floodplain. Ferns spread like green lace across the damp earth. Conifers rose in ragged clusters, their resin scent thick in the humidity. Dragonflies the size of hawks darted between trunks. Somewhere distant, something enormous moved. A vibration came first. Then a rhythm. Then the slow, synchronized thunder of many feet. A herd of sauropods emerged from the tree line, giants in miniature. They were not yet titans, not the sky-reaching Diplodocus or towering Brachiosaurus adults that would one day shake the canopy. These were juveniles, barely taller than a two-story building. Their necks were still slender, their proportions slightly awkward. Their eyes, enormous and dark, scanned constantly. And at the center of the herd, smaller still, hatchlings. Each no longer than a large dog. Their eggs, laid weeks earlier in shallow, scraped nests, had been no larger than a human torso. No massive shell. No fortress of protection. Just thin calcium and luck. Luck was thin currency here. A shape shifted along the riverbank. Golden eyes blinked once. An Allosaurus watched. Small eggs, big risk. Back in London, Morrison pulled up a digital reconstruction of a sauropod egg. No more than 1 foot in diameter, he said during a recorded discussion. That's the strange part. When these animals walked, the ground shook. But they started small. Very small. The paradox was striking. The largest land animals ever to walk the earth began life in eggs that could fit under a desk. Modern elephants invest heavily in each calf. Whales birth already massive young. But sauropods had taken another route entirely. They laid many small eggs, buried them, and left. No parental defense. No towering adult guarding the nest. A hatchling that broke free entered a world where nearly everything could eat it. And growing large took time. Years. Years during which it remained vulnerable. In the fossil layers of dry mesa, that vulnerability was written in numbers. The hunt. The wind shifted across the Jurassic plain. The Allosaurus lifted its head and tasted the air. The scent was unmistakable, plant-eater musk, crushed fern, juvenile sweat. The predator did not move toward the towering adults. It knew better. An adult sauropod's tail was a weapon, a muscular whip capable of breaking bone. A misjudged approach could mean shattered ribs, crushed skull. Instead, the hunter scanned for the small one. There. A straggler. A hatchling had drifted from the protective ring of larger bodies. It struggled over uneven ground, its legs too new for speed, its neck bobbing uncertainly. The Allosaurus moved silently at first, muscles rolling beneath scaled hide. Then it ran. The earth exploded beneath its claws. The hatchlings squealed, a thin, piping sound swallowed by the thunder of feet. One juvenile turned. Too slow. The predator closed the distance in seconds. A snap. A shriek. Then stillness. The herd bellowed, tails lashing, but they did not pursue. Risk calculation lived even in dinosaur brains. Protect the many. Not the one. The Allosaurus dragged its prize toward the tree line. One meal among thousands across millennia. A web of meals. At UCL, the bones told no stories of squeals or chase. They spoke in scratches and chemistry. Morrison and his colleagues sorted fossils into categories, tooth marks embedded in rib fragments. Wear patterns on carnivore teeth. Isotopic signatures, faint chemical fingerprints preserved inside mineralized bone. Each clue was subtle alone. Together, they formed links. Predator to prey. Juvenile to hunter. They built a food web, a map of who ate whom. It grew dense. More than 12,000 unique feeding chains emerged from the Morrison formation data. The long-necked dinosaurs were not just present. They were central. They connected everything. Armored dinosaurs like Stegosaurus appeared far less often as prey. Their spine tails and plated backs carried a cost. Tooth fractures in theropod fossils suggested dangerous encounters. But juvenile sauropods? They were everywhere in the network. Easy calories. Steady supply. Why sauropods dominated? The Morrison Formation, laid down roughly 150 million years ago, captured a flourishing ecosystem. Multiple species of long-necked giants coexisted. Diplodocus, with its whip-like tail and horizontally held neck, swept low vegetation. Brachiosaurus, front limbs longer than its hind, browsed high in the canopy. Different feeding heights meant less competition. They partitioned the forest vertically. While one stripped ferns, another tore conifer branches. As they fed, they reshaped the world. Trees snapped. Underbrush flattened. Clearings opened. They were ecosystem engineers long before the term existed. But their dominance created imbalance. So much biomass in one group meant the entire system depended on how many of their young survived. If too many hatchlings died, the giants would dwindle. If too many survived, plants would vanish. Predators, it seemed, had found a stabilizing pressure point. Eat the young. Spare the adults. Maintain the balance. Cassius Morrison's realization. Late one evening, Morrison sat alone in the lab. The network glowed on his screen, nodes and lines, a digital constellation of ancient appetite. He zoomed out. The sauropods sat at the center like suns. He zoomed in. Nearly every major predator connected to them at some stage, but most links targeted juveniles. He leaned back. They weren't apexing on adults, he whispered to himself. They didn't have to. The Jurassic predators had it easy, comparatively. They did not need bone-crushing jaws to tackle fully grown titans. They had nurseries. A steady conveyor belt of vulnerable flesh. And that, Morrison realized, changed everything. The cost of power. 70 million years later, the world would look very different. But in the late Jurassic, predators thrived in a system tilted gently in their favor. An adult sauropod was nearly untouchable alone. But a herd could produce dozens of hatchlings each season. Even if most perished, enough survived to replenish the giants. The predators, meanwhile, could afford caution. An Allosaurus need not gamble daily against a 10-ton adversary. It could stalk the margins, snatch the weak, scavenge when convenient. Injury fossils revealed that fights did happen. Deep gouges, healed fractures. But perhaps less often than once imagined. The food web suggested choice. And choice shaped evolution. Later hunters faced hardship. In another time, the late Cretaceous, prey grew more dangerous. Armored dinosaurs developed heavier plating. Horned ceratopsians bore lethal headgear. Hadrosaurs formed massive herds. Long-necked sauropods still existed, but ecosystems were more fragmented. When giants like Tyrannosaurus rex evolved, they did so in a different world. Their prey were closer to their own size. To survive, they evolved bone-crushing jaws, binocular vision, heightened senses. Power was no longer optional. It was necessary. Morrison's comparison was stark. In the Jurassic, opportunity favored moderation. In the Cretaceous, pressure rewarded extremes. Anatomy followed appetite. What fossils miss? Dry mesa captured less than 10,000 years of deposition, a blink in geologic time. Floods swept bones together. Scavengers scattered remains. Tiny hatchling skeletons might never fossilize at all. The web was sharp but narrow, a snapshot, not a census. Still, patterns emerged clearly. Juvenile sauropods were too abundant in the network to dismiss. They powered the system, rebuilding ancient ecosystems. For generations, paleontology focused on spectacle, the tallest, the fiercest, the largest skeletons mounted in museums. But food webs shifted perspective. Instead of asking, how big was it, scientists asked, who depended on it? Counting links revealed vulnerability. Which species supported the most others? Which sat at the brink if numbers dipped? Sauropods, ironically, were both dominant and fragile. Their young were lifelines, and liabilities. Back to the floodplain. A storm rolled over the Jurassic plain. Rain lashed the earth. The river swelled. In the chaos, several hatchlings were separated from their herd. One stumbled into mud and could not rise. By dawn, only scattered bones remained. Insects buzzed. A small theropod darted in to claim scraps. Life fed on life. And beneath the surface, sediment began its slow burial. A new lens. Months after publishing preliminary findings, Morrison returned to Dry Mesa. He stood where layers of stone held intertwined skeletons, predator and prey preserved together. Wind hissed through dry grass. He imagined the hatchlings. The constant risk. The silent calculus of survival. Seen through meals instead of museum poses, the Jurassic became less about giants in heroic stances and more about vulnerability, about how even the largest creatures began as fragile things no bigger than a dog. The ecosystem had not been powered by roaring adults. It had been powered by its youngest giants. And somewhere, 70 million years later, a lineage of predators would face a harsher equation, one that demanded bigger teeth, stronger jaws, and greater risk. But here, in the late Jurassic West, the balance had been maintained by eggs small enough to fit in a backpack. Morrison smiled faintly. Ancient bones, once static, now pulsed with behavior. Each new quarry might refine the picture, more eggshell fragments, clearer bite marks, chemical signatures tracking growth stages. With every added detail, prehistory edged closer to life. Not monsters. Not myths. But a network of hunger and survival, written in stone.